How's it going? Today we're going to be comparing the cameras on the iPhone 13 Pro versus the Tecno Camon 19 Pro. And I know this is not a fair comparison, it's not supposed to be since this is a budget phone, which is about $300-ish versus the phone that's $1,000. So basically this comparison is to show you side by side if this camera is worth it next to flagship level standards. I was at the launch when they announced this phone, and they had a presentation showing about the cameras, which they catered towards the younger audience, which makes sense because they don't have a lot of money. They probably would want something cheaper and not something super expensive. But the thing is, everyone knows what an iPhone is. Their friends most likely have one, which makes them want to have one. But anyways, this phone does have a triple camera setup. It does not have an ultra wide though, just a wide telephoto and a depth sensor. The wide actually has a pretty high megapixel count, it's 64 megapixels. The telephoto is 50 and the depth sensor is 2, which is higher than Apple's 12 megapixel cameras. But I want to tell you that higher megapixel count does not mean a better camera. It also has to do with the camera sensor, how big the sensor is, and there's a lot more factors going into it. So just don't see it as, oh, this phone has a higher megapixel, it should be better. I would say the biggest strength for the Tecno is the back camera's HDR. You can see more in the shadows where the iPhone is pretty dark. For a triple camera setup on a Tecno, I do prefer an ultra wide just because it does give you that epic imagery and it does give you a different perspective. The iPhone can shoot up to 4K and the Tecno can shoot up to 2K, which is not stabilized, and I don't think it's worth using 2K at all. Definitely this phone is a 1080p shooter. The Tecno does have an ultra steady mode, which I just turned on. It did zoom in or crop in a bit more, but it is smoother than the clip before it. Now to be fair, I did shoot in 1080p for both phones and the stabilization on a Tecno is not too good. I would just keep ultra steady on at all times. For telephoto, I can already tell from the screens itself that the iPhone is much better, it's clearer. Even though the Tecno does have that 50 megapixel camera, it still doesn't beat the 12 on the iPhone. At 3x you'll see less of a difference, but once you hit max zoom, that's where you can clearly tell the iPhone wins. And I wouldn't really start to pan because it's not that stable either. So right now I'm gonna go find a spot to do some portrait mode and then grab some food after to take some food pictures on Instagram. Looking at these pictures, I would say portrait mode is my favorite out of all the modes on the Tecno Camon, and the quality is not too far off too. The brightness is a bit overexposed in some pictures and it's not as controlled as the iPhones, but overall it's not too bad. It doesn't have a 3x option like the iPhones, so you won't get that nicer compressed look, but for that you do need a lot of space outside. I feel like if you do want to get closer to the iPhone's image, just add a little bit more saturation and you should be very close to it. Now, using the Instagram camera app, it doesn't seem like there's any stabilization when you're shooting video. There is some pixelization as well, so it's not as clean looking, and when you're downloading images and especially video, it's much slower and it does take a longer time to process it. The pictures actually look pretty close. The Tecno is lacking a little bit of the clarity and it's darker. For Instagram, I would probably avoid doing video and just stick mainly with photos. For the front camera, I would say this does need a lot more work. The whole imagery, the colors are very grayed out, it doesn't look as sharp, and HDR is not as good. If you do like taking selfies or vlog using the front camera, I would suggest avoiding that too. Let's move on to low light, and for performance actually, it's not too good. It's very low on shutter, or it does look like it has low shutter speed, so you would really need to keep your phone super still to get a clear, clean shot. There is a lot of noise in the video, and as you can tell, it did lose focus too. There is one positive about the Tecno is that it is brighter than the iPhone's pictures, but it's not that sharp. Unless, like I said before, you have to be super duper still. It does have its own night mode, which does clean up the image and it does look better, but if you are in a totally dark place, it's not gonna look as good as the iPhones because you can't really see anything versus the iPhones you can. So that is the comparison to let you guys see how good or bad a $300 phone is next to a flagship phone. And it does help you determine if you want to buy this as well. So thanks for watching and I'll see you guys later.